think anyone had noticed if I did a video with my glasses upside down like this. Hi, welcome to Tom Reads Things. My name is Tom. Hello everybody, welcome back to Tom Reads Things. My name is Tom. Hope you're all very well. It's been ages since I've done a video. I think the last video I did was the vlog when I went to Burley House. That was the second week of the 2 weeks off that we've just come to the end of. So yeah, it's been ages. It's been well over a week since I did my last video. I had 2 weeks off and it was really, really nice. It was so great just to chill out, do some nice things. I met up with a friend for lunch, and I went with my friend Sophia to Althorpe Estate as well, which was the family home of the Spencer family, so Princess Diana's family home. And it's also her resting place as well. So it was amazing to kind of look around there during our second week. But unfortunately, I couldn't vlog that because they don't allow photography in there. But it's still a very much lived-in house by that family, so I can kind of understand why. So yes, very sorry that my July wrap-up part 2 is so belated. Where are we now? We're well into August, so many apologies for that. So I had a great reading month in July. I've already spoken about 4 of the books that I read in the month of July, and I spoke about those in my July wrap-up part 1, but this is July wrap-up part 2. So I've got 4 books to talk about. So the first one that I want to talk to you about is Ghost Wall by Sarah Moss. So I started this earlier in the year and DNF'd it because I was like, this isn't really that great. But I picked it up again because it's only very small, and I thought I'll give this a go. It won't take me long to read. This follows the story of Sylvie, who is a young girl living with her family for a week, plus an archaeologist professor, in a kind of hut in Northumberland, doing some kind of experiment on ancient English living. They want to experience what it would have been like to have lived, you know, kind of sort of 800 years ago in the English countryside, and they're doing it all very authentically, you know, gathering their food and you know, cooking it on the fire and all of those kind of things. And the main focus really of this book is Sylvie's relationship with her father, and it becomes quite obvious early on that he is not the best father in the world, and he is actually quite abusive towards Sylvie. You can see that he's a very sort of aggressive character. And at the beginning of this book, there is a scene where a young girl who was living in the UK in that time, sort of 800 years ago, was, I think, stoned to death at the beginning of this book. And the blurb of this book says that Sylvie's storyline is kind of haunted by this other girl's storyline throughout the book, and the death of this girl. That's not really the case at all, so I don't really know why it says that. At least I didn't get that at all from this book, so I was really confused. I was like, well, where's the kind of mirroring of stories happening here? It's not happening at all. So yeah, I wasn't really sure why it said that. It packs a short, sharp punch, but I kind of wanted a bit more. Not a huge amount really happens. The characters aren't really very well developed. So yeah, I mean, I want to say I enjoyed this, and on paper it is absolutely something I should have enjoyed, but didn't. So there you go. So yeah, that's Ghost Walk by Sarah Moss. My goodness, look how bald I'm going. Woo! So the next book that I want to talk about, I first heard over on Simon's channel, Savage Reads. That's where I get all my reading recommendations from. And it is one that I absolutely adored in every possible way. It's absolutely going to be one of my favourite books of the year, no doubt. And I would highly, highly, highly recommend it to anyone that is thinking about reading it. And that is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. So I read this while we were on holiday in Norfolk, and I devoured it really, really quickly. It tells the story of a young Vietnamese boy, a kind of young man, I guess, and his mother and his grandmother. He's very close to his grandmother, but he has a kind of tricky relationship with his mother. His grandmother and mother are refugees, I think, really, of the Vietnam War. And this book not only explores the effect that that war had on them and how they are able to cope in kind of modern day-to-day life, having the remnants of that war still in their minds, but it also explores their relationship with the grandson or the son, and how he is affected by the effects that that war had on them. The main character in this is the young boy or the young man, and he meets an American guy at the same age as him, and they begin a relationship. And it also explores the difficulties that they face with that as well. The guy that he falls in love with has quite an abusive father, and it explores all of these different themes of conflict. This is so beautifully written. One of the things that I really loved about this is how it can be you can be going along with the narrative of the story, and then it's almost like everything goes into slow motion, and you see these scenes in an incredibly cinematic way, and it can just be small things in terms of, like, I think there's one bit of description in the book where he's talking about milk that's been spilled on the table, or the way that he sees his grandmother standing at the end of the garden through a window, and it feels incredibly cinematic and it feels incredibly epic, but it also feels very, very personal. The description in this book, the character development, the narrative, the storyline, the plot, everything, the pacing is just exquisite, and I would highly recommend this to anyone that has seen it on BookTube and is thinking about reading it. It is absolutely brilliant and incredibly moving and just bloody wonderful, really. So yeah, give it a read. Now then, what would a July wrap-up be without talking about Jane Austen July? I have been taking part in Jane Austen July. I read 2 books by Jane Austen. I wanted to read more, but I'm sorry, I got something in my eye then. Oh yeah, it's my eyeball. I wanted to read more Jane Austen, but I didn't really have time. So I read 2 books by Jane Austen. I read Sense and Sensibility. So for those of you who don't know, Sense and Sensibility storyline is very well known, but I didn't actually know it before coming to this book, which I think is kind of helped me, really. This book follows the story of 2 sisters, Marianne and Eleanor. They're very different sisters. Eleanor is very straightforward, very clear-minded, and Marianne is incredibly passionate and a bit more wild than Eleanor. So they live at the glorious Norland Park, but then unfortunately their father dies and the park is inherited by their stepbrother, or their half-brother. They then move into a cottage in Devonshire with their mother, and they meet 2 men, and it's about their relationships with those 2 men and the kind of antics that go on as they court these 2 men, or as they don't court these 2 men, as it may be. So I really enjoyed this. This was my 4th Jane Austen novel. So I've read Pride and Prejudice, which I absolutely loved. I read Northanger Abbey, which I really loved. I read the book I'm going to talk about in a minute, which I think is probably my favourite Jane Austen novel, and then this. And I think this is probably my least favourite out of the 4. However, I did still really enjoy it. I think one of the things that can sometimes that people can sometimes think when they think of Jane Austen is that they just think it's about wealthy families trying to marry above their rank, or trying to make good marriages, and it is a lot about that, but also there's some incredible emotional writing, especially in Sense and Sensibility. There is a part where one of the characters basically gets their heart broken, and the way that Jane Austen describes the pain and anguish that this character feels is absolutely heart-wrenching, really. And I think it really made me think of Jane Austen in a different way. I love Jane Austen because her books are about marriage and society, but also this made me think, wow, there is actually a lot more to Jane Austen than kind of meets the eye if you're only willing to kind of look. So yes, I really, really enjoyed this, since even though it's my least favourite Jane Austen novel, it's still an absolute belter of a read. So yeah, do give this one a go. Say hello to the ladies and gentlemen. La 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 la. Bye then. So the next book that I read for Jane Austen July, and the last book that I read in July, is my favourite Jane Austen book, and that is Persuasion. So this follows the story of Anne Elliot. She is, well, in by 18th century standards, she's becoming past it. I think she's like 28 years old. Ridiculous. God, what does that make me then? And in her younger days, sort of 8 years earlier, she was sort of romantically involved with a young captain. But then she was persuaded by those around her in her society to break off the relationship. And then 8 years later, she meets him again, and for in those 8 years in between, she's never stopped thinking about him. She's never fallen out of love with him, and it kind of goes on from there about their sort of rekindled relationship. I absolutely bloody loved this. I love the settings. I love books that are set in Bath during that time. For anyone who's been to Bath, it's very easy to imagine those characters walking those streets and going to those places. And the wonderful, gorgeous Georgian houses and crescents in Bath kind of really, if you've been there, it really helps to bring this to life. I love the character of Anne Elliot. I love the fact that she never falls out of love with Captain Wentworth. And it's just very romantic and wonderful, and I love it. So yeah, I really can't recommend this enough. I know that actually this does divide opinion quite a bit. I know that Emily over at Novell Novels, I'll link her channel down below. I know she didn't get on with this as well, but she's read a lot for Jane Austen July in July, and I'll try and link one of her Jane Austen July videos down below. So yeah, but I absolutely loved this. And yeah, I think it's actually a great place to start with Jane Austen, either this or Northanger Abbey, but probably more this because it's more Jane Austen-y than Northanger Abbey. Yeah, loved it. Give it a go. So that's it from me for my July part 2. I promise I'll be more frequent with the video uploads for you. I will be back later this week with a update on my channel. So a couple of the ideas that I wanted to run past you that I'm going to be doing on my channel. A couple of different series ideas and things like that. So yes, I hope you all have a lovely week ahead, and I will speak to you in the comments down below. Cheers, bye.